From the studios of the Bakersfield Californian, it's time to open up with real people and real talk about real stuff. And now, a special welcome to our friends throughout California, across the nation, and around the world to this week's edition of Open Up.
Good morning. Welcome to Open Up. I'm Tina Miller.
And I'm Don Clark, your favorite pair on the air. So glad you're joining us today.
Put my mic up. So, Don, what an exciting day to be alive.
Oh, I'll say. Beautiful day here in California. We hope it's even more beautiful wherever you are out there in America and across the world.
Yes, and drinking the best of health. Nature's Food Market and Juice Bar, 2000 H Street. Chuck and Wendy Noss.
I never eat breakfast on these Thursday mornings because this is just it. It is so good.
It's all in one, Don, and it's so delicious. And I had a real treat this morning. I had a wheatgrass shot.
Yeah?
Yes.
How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great.
Okay.
No, it was really delicious. And I just lost my earpiece here. But we have a wonderful show coming up in our later, latter part of the show.
Yes.
We have a young lady talking with us about, well, actually, she is a grief recovery facilitator. And she's got the goods on it, Dawn, how to help.
All right.
So, but before that.
And we have many viewers in Europe, and she is from Europe. And so stay tuned for that.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, the whole premise of this show, when Tina and I started this a little over a year ago, is number one, we wanted to be a strong resource for small businesses because that's the backbone of our country and our world, independent people doing their thing entrepreneurially. Secondly, we wanted to be a great encouragement to people who are going through hard times by bringing people who've been through hard times and asking them, how'd you get to the other side? But from time to time, we want to take on vital issues, and we're going to do that today.
Yes.
And is anything more important than water? The water we drink, the water we use, the water we use for everything.
Everything.
This state, and in fact, this world is in a water crisis. And we're going to be talking right now about water here in California, particularly. We're going to talk about water here in Bakersfield, water here in the Valley, and what's being done to our water, to this vast reserve. Is it going to be there forever for us? It is going to be there in a pure state. So we're very glad to welcome Patricia Oliver.
Yes.
And Ralph Wiegis, two attorneys who have been deeply involved in water issues, water cases here in the Valley, and come to us with enormous insights about water in this valley and by implication, everywhere. So, guys,
welcome.
Patricia, you're kind of the main guest here. You're the sidekick here, Ralph. Patricia, how did you get involved as an attorney in water cases?
Well, Ralph, I spent most of my career in private practice and had spent 2 years working as the executive director of a legal aid organization in Los Angeles, Christian Legal Aid of LA. And I went back into private practice. And the very first thing I got involved with was a water case. And it turned out that many farmers were coming to us because their water was being contaminated with salt. And salt water is not very good for growing crops.
Bad for glass, is it in the movie?
Right? So just imagine, having too much salt in the water, and so suddenly it's killing the crops. And we started investigating to figure out what was going on. And as it turned out, I learned that salt water is a natural waste product from any oil production. And so whenever you bring up 1 barrel of oil, you're going to bring up 10 barrels of salt water. So the question is, what do you do with the salt water? And as it turns out, the state has admitted they've been allowing and improperly allowing oil companies to inject directly into the aquifer.
They admitted this.
Yes, about 6 billion gallons last year of salt water was injected into the aquifer. So the question is, how do we deal with this issue of contamination of the fresh water? And that's just one example of what's happening with the salt water. And the interesting part is, let's really make it clear, the farmers recognize they need oil. They want oil. We also need fresh water and food. So it's not so much a matter of let's stop oil production whatsoever, but instead, how do we balance all of these very vital interests with fresh water, food, and oil so that we continue to develop harmoniously rather than risking the loss of the crops.
Is there a parallel here between we need energy and so we can have atomic energy, but then what do you do with atomic waste? And that becomes the huge problem. Is there a parallel here?
I think that's exactly right on, that it's a question of what do you do with the waste products. And it always has been. So this has been something that's been a longstanding issue. When Nixon was president, actually, that was when they first proposed what's called the Safe Water Drinking Act, because they recognized that these types of waste products from either oil production or other kinds of important industrial activities needed to be disposed of. So he proposed the Safe Water Drinking Act. It was passed under President Ford. It was strengthened by President Reagan because everybody, whether it was conservative or liberal, recognized water's vital. Let's fix this. And so those are longstanding laws to protect our fresh water.
Why aren't people following the rules here?
Wow. Well, obviously it's a little cheaper if you don't follow the rules because otherwise you have to figure out how to dispose of it. And the reality is the state's admitting they haven't been enforcing the rules. So between the fact that it's cheaper not to follow the rules and the state's not enforcing the rules, then we're facing a serious problem.
Ralph, we've just heard the state improperly and now knowingly is allowing this contamination to go on, this potential contamination to go on. You've been at this a long time. What's going on here?
Well, I have been at it a long time. I've spent 13 years litigating against water pollution involving the biggest oil companies, ExxonMobil and Shell, in the form of Era Energy. And what we have is we have the economics and the political economics of how politics works. And it doesn't work with abusing your biggest contributors. And what has been sacrificed knowingly is the water quality. And in my 13 years of work on this issue on behalf of farmers, I can tell you that it is a very dismal outcome because the damage that is done is too big to fix. And we're seeing, even today, with more willingness to talk about it, we don't see today, we see this problem and we're shutting this down today. We see, we'll give them so many more years. Well, the end result of that is the problem is too big to fix. And the public is going to have to pay the price.
Now, pay the price in as far financially, or how about health-wise? Is that
In every fashion? This water that comes up isn't just salt water.
okay?
It has a lot of very bad things in it. Very bad things for crops, boron in it. It has very bad things for people. It has naturally occurring radioactive substances in the water. And all of this is coming up, and it could be reasonably disposed of for a small price, and that's always been the case. And instead of paying that small price, what has been done with it is it has been cheaply disposed of.
Improperly disposed
And
of.
improperly disposed of.
And so how is it disposed of now?
Well, we take this issue that's current. That's kind of laughable to me, that the state has now just discovered that there's 900 disposal ponds where wastewater has just been dumped into a pond. Now, it's like setting up your toilet over your drinking water. What they're doing is they're dumping this and they're letting it just drain out the bottom of these ponds into the aquifers. Now, this was outlawed in Texas in the 1960s. How on earth has it been going on in California on a large scale since that time. There's a political reason for that.
Patricia, what should the oil companies be doing to protect the water and to protect farmers? Should there be a collaboration between them? Is there any such collaboration? What's the status now of what oil companies are doing with this wastewater?
You know, they continue to inject and they don't want to stop. And so from a certain perspective, I think Ralph has hit the nail on the head that right now, as long as the political perspective is, you know, whoever pays the most gets the best deal from the state, it's not going to be helpful to any of us. But the state and the oil companies can do something. You know, when I was a little girl, I remember my parents coming home and the house was a big mess. And I pointed the fingers at my brothers pointed the fingers at me. Well, that didn't matter. We had to clean it up. There's a mess. I think it's time that the oil companies and the government sit down with the farmers and say, let's fix this. It's in our best interest that we sit down and we work on this together. It doesn't benefit any of us if we don't do that. And there are ways that they can fix it because, you know, Ralph probably knows of many things that I don't even know about, but I also know there are things in like San Luis Obispo County where the oil companies clean the water before it's disposed of. So then they can sell the water. And given the amount of water, when I said 1 barrel of oil and you get 10 barrels of the salt water, could you imagine the value of those 10 barrels of salt water today? You clean it up, maybe $250 million, I think, last year. So the value of that water is incredible. So let's sit down and collaborate, figure out how we can build the same types of treatment facilities that they use in other counties in California and across the country, and say, let's clean it before we get rid of it. It's simple.
I want to hear the worst case scenario when we come back from our
yes.
break. I want to hear how bad could it be if we don't fix this problem. We'll be right back with
Thank
more
you.
on the water here in California.